going on, YouTube? What is today? Saturday. Happy Saturday to everybody. Hope you guys are having a pretty decent weekend so far, and hope somebody had an amazing week last week. So today's topic, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of plea mitigation and what that really means. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about what a plea mitigation should be versus what we typically see, including when I went through it myself, and what we can maybe do to avoid some of these things. Before we get started, make sure you go ahead and make sure you've already subscribed to my channel. If you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe now. Tap that bell to make sure you get notifications. Some of you may have your notifications turned off, and that may be why you do not get notified when we go live or post videos. Today's video is going to be redone in the form of a pre-recorded video to shorten it up, just because I feel like this is a really important topic. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that are kind of like goldfish. They get bored real quick. Their attention span's not very long. So we want to make sure that we were able to get this to everybody that potentially might need to see it. So we are running a little bit early. It's like 12:57, so we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to jump in here. The reason why we've decided to do a video on this today is it's really been, for some reason, more so lately than it's been in the past, that attorneys are almost giving a lot of grief on clients putting effort into their personal narratives, their character reference letters, allocutions, things like that I'm surprised that attorneys haven't taken this more seriously. Who do we got in here? John Bowers, thank you for doing these videos, Dan. I'm facing Fed time and hope and time and you. Awesome. Of course, oh, not John, Joan Bowers. And Joan, if you got questions, the best thing I can say is give me a call, text, email, whatever is easier for you, and we can definitely talk about your personal situation. So as you guys know, I went to federal prison. I went through the process myself. I also went through the process prior to going to prison, trying to do some of my own research, reaching out to a lot of prison consultants with just the frustrating fact that a lot of these guys charge $10,000 or $15,000. I just received a text message from a guy that I'll be speaking to after today's show that is talking to other consultants that want to charge him, $10,000 for a consulting fee. And I'm not saying it's not worth $10,000, but clearly that is a budget that is not affordable to everybody. So that's one of the reasons why I continually do what I do, even though I've been getting so much grief lately and I don't understand where it's coming from. I guess it's just some people do not like to see people doing good. I've been getting hit pretty hard on Facebook and a lot of the prison chat forums like Club Fed and Alderson's Women Prison. It's just these people come out of the woodwork that not only do they not appreciate what we try to do, but it's almost like they're trying to find flaws and issues on how it's not positive and how it's not helping people. Real frustrating. So there's other prison consultants out there, and a lot of the information, a lot of the content that I've learned, like the video that I posted last week about the judge pretty much advocating and explaining why he would like to see more personal narratives done at the same time as the PSR. This information isn't just information that I all of a sudden came up with. This is from myself doing my own research, reaching out to other prison consultants. A lot of you, if you haven't checked out Michael Santos's YouTube channel, Michael Santos is a gentleman that spent a lot of time in federal prison at every custody level, from the pen, the medium, the lows, the camps. And he spent, I think, a couple decades in federal prison. He's got a really unique story. He's doing a lot of good, positive things, trying to give back, not just in prison consulting, but also in the aspect of prison reform, working in prisons, making content and information available to prisons to help inmates as they're getting ready for the release. So if you haven't checked out Michael Santos's YouTube channel, I think you should do so, because you might be able to get a lot of other additional information that you're not finding here. And the more the better, right? People helping people. I can't sit here and hog it all myself. So I just posted a link. Hope that's a link to Michael Santos's channel. I just posted a link to Michael Santos's channel in the chat room. So guys, take a look, check it out. So let's jump into today's topic. So today, plea of mitigation, how to execute effectively, by yours truly, Rdap Dan. So so guys, your plan of mitigation. I've got notes here, so if you see me reading, don't hold me accountable. So a plea of mitigation, it's designed basically to persuade the decision makers, and in a lot of your guys' cases, which is going to be the federal judge, it's designed to persuade the judge to a more lenient disposition. Basically, you're hoping for a downward departure. You're hoping that the judge is going to go below the guidelines. You're hoping that the judge is going to see you as more than just the person, or for just the crimes that you've committed in this instant offense, or even possible prior offenses. So how do you do that? So your plan of mitigation is what's really going to be important. And what that means is you can't just put blind faith and blind trust into your attorney hoping that they're going to do everything. Now, we can hope that they're going to do everything, and you can hope that all of your potential questions that you may have are going to be answered accurately and in a timely manner by your attorneys. But we're seeing all too often that these things do not happen. So again, it's very important to properly go into this with your plea of mitigation. It's equally as important to be able to identify a poor plea of mitigation can have enormous adverse actions in the disposition of your sentencing. If it's not handled properly, the judge can have no real idea as to the type of person you are, other than to the basic information that was given during your PSR, and you could either get sentenced to what you're being expected to get sentenced to within your guidelines, or even potentially go above the guidelines and get a higher sentence. That's why we're going to talk about this today and make sure we break it down so we're not just throwing out words. Not everybody understands what a plea of mitigation may really mean, what's involved. So let's kind of break it down step by step. So step one, if you're guilty and the evidence clearly points in the direction that you did what they're saying that you did, fess up and admit guilt right away. That's going to be number one. So part of your plan of mitigation is going to be, if you are guilty, if you did it, if they have a ton of evidence against you, if you're in a conspiracy and maybe you don't want to admit to it, maybe you don't want to deal with the fact that you might be looking at prison time, I'm telling you, mitigating right now properly is important. So if you did it and they have proof that you did it, witnesses, phone calls, whatever it is, the government's coming at you, fess up early on and admit it. That is going to be definitely step one, super important. So if you want to take some notes on these guys, take some notes or come back to the video a little bit later. I will be putting out a video this week on this topic, a much condensed version of it. Step two. Now, it's super important for one, must be extremely contrite, showing genuine remorse for what you've done. It's one thing to say, I did it, and yes, I'm sorry for doing it, taking accountability, take acceptance of responsibility. These are all the the documents that you're going to hear about. Your judges or your attorney is going to be telling you we're going to go for acceptance of responsibility. That's great. That's just basically saying that you did it. But showing genuine remorse is a little bit different. You need to be able to explain this. You need to be able to outline this. You need to be able to illustrate this. Being able to portray this properly so the judge can see that you're not only are you saying you did it because you're looking for a plea, but you're showing a genuine version of you that is remorseful. So you're going to have to find a way to demonstrate that, and we're going to be talking about that in the end of this video. Third, showing evidence that the defendant, being yourself, if you're the one that's facing this right now, has fully cooperated in the investigation. And by doing this, it's normally received well by whoever is going to be prosecuted, the judge, the prosecutor. So when you've gone through the steps and you've cooperated properly, and you've started off early on, you're cooperating with the government, you're working with the prosecutors, if it's a drug charge, you're working with DEA, whoever it is that's investigating you, if you're not just throwing your hands up and not telling them anything, and you know that you're guilty, and you're making them force their way through to get the evidence, because they will get it eventually. You're either going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. And if you try to sit there and play the tough guy, and to the end, chances are you're going to be the one getting knocked over the head. So it's important that if you have cooperated, to start doing this early on, because the outcome of this can equal a much lighter potential sentence. And it can be almost a gift from the government. And I know it doesn't sound like a gift at the time because you're looking at prison time, but trust me, for those of you that have been going through this, you know how much worse it could possibly be. So early plea of mitigation is almost as important as the entire mitigation process, when you decide to go and take your plea. The earlier you take your plea, the better, because this usually translates into the government saving on resources, money that they're spending, which they're going to, in the end, give you a thank you of some sort, whether it be a downward departure, offering you a 5K1, letting you know that they're not going to step in if the judge wants to downward depart. They're not going to have any issues with that. Early cooperation can make a big deal, because usually the people that start cooperating first are usually the ones that are going to be offered whatever type of deals, and how good those deals are going to be. Typically, those who come first are going to be the ones that get in line for that. They're actually going to be able to take those benefits. And I know I'm not sitting here to go say, go tell on everybody, but I'm telling you that if you're facing federal prison time and you're concerned about the time that you might be looking at, you're concerned about what this is going to do to your family, what it's going to do to your future, these are things that you have to consider. Regardless what your final choice is going to be, you'd be crazy to just walk into there with just your mind already set, not thinking about your friends and family and what situation that you've now allowed yourself to be sitting in. The most persuasive thing a defendant is able to do in good mitigation advocacy is to provide evidence from the time of the occasion that you got in trouble. So what this is saying is, if you're really trying to mitigate your sentence and you're trying to show the judge that you've changed your life, you're trying to explain to the judge and the prosecution that you've taken on new habits, you're going down a better path, you can't just say these things. You have to be able to produce this. So basically, if you got in trouble 2 years ago, what have you done since the time you've got in trouble? You've maintained a job. Have you been doing things like NA or AA, going to community service, going out into your community, giving back, documenting these things? Because what's going to happen is, at the time of sentencing, the judge is going to basically decide what type of person you are, what type of remorse that you've shown, how you've dealt with your victim impact. And you got to remember, everybody that's going through this has a victim, right? Whether you've defrauded people, taken money from people, your friends and family become your victims. They're going right along with this with you. So it's really important to show how you've changed your life and demonstrate this, because usually there's a lot of time that goes by between the time that you are indicted, or not indicted, but maybe where the investigation starts and you're under investigation and you realize these mistakes have caught up with you. And you're going to start creating new habits. You're going to start creating a new path. You're going to start trying to recreate the type of person that you were versus the type of person that you want to be. And you have to be willing to put in the effort into the short-term goals to get the long-term goal. The benefits of doing this is not just going to be a potential lighter sentence, but it's really going to allow you to reflect on yourself and see the type of decisions and choices that led you here and what you've put people in your lives through. So starting that process early on could have, again, enormous impact at the time of sentencing. When you get to the references are super important when you're dealing with sentencing. References from your friends, from your family, but at the same time, these references need to be genuine. They need to be factual. They need to be on point. It can't just be a bunch of hype and glamour and glorifying what type of person you are. You don't deserve to go to prison. You go to church every day. You've got well-behaved children. You've got an elderly mother that needs you. You're the sole bread provider in your family, and without you, your family is going to suffer. If you've got people writing things like that in their letters, you need to redirect and start over and reevaluate what it is you're trying to get done. If you're trying to sympathize with the judge and get the judge to see you in that light, it's not going to happen. The judge is prepared and expecting you to write things like that in your letter. We're not saying not to demonstrate what you've done positively, but the approach and how you deliver this is just as important as what you're delivering. The how is more important than the what in some cases. So when you're explaining this in your letters, especially from your friends and family, they have to illustrate how this has affected them, what you've put them through, how this has changed their lives, how this has created anxiety and stress and sleepless nights in their lives because of your choices, because of how much they care and worry about you, and they don't want to see you go to prison. Now this is affecting them just as much, potentially, if not more, than it's affecting you. So it's important for this to go into the character reference letters of whoever's going to be writing these. That's why we stress so much that people underestimate the power of these letters. A poorly written letter can not only not help you, it can hurt you, because it just continues to show the judge that it's all about you, that you're not focusing on your friends and family, you're not focusing on the people that you've hurt around you, that you're just concerned about the amount of time that you might be doing. The focus can't be on that. The judge already knows you don't want to go to prison. The judge already knows you don't want to leave your family. The judge already knows your family doesn't want you to go to prison. These things are already known without making any statements. So what statements you need to focus on are the statements of how this has impacted your friends and family. And it needs to segue into why they have decided to become character references for you. What have you demonstrated since the time you got in trouble to your friends and family that you are remorseful, that you are sorry for what you did, and you do understand the impact that this has caused on them? How is that being illustrated, not just in your letter, but how is this being illustrated in the letters from your friends and family to the judge regarding you? Your personal narrative from you to the judge, equally as important. This is probably the most important letter because ideally, which is not explained enough, the personal narrative ideally should be done around the same time as your pre-sentence report. Doing this and timing this properly is going to show the judge that you're not waiting till the last minute. If you look at the interview that we posted, that Michael Santos, when he interviewed this judge, and I can't imagine how hard it was for an ex-felon turned prison coach to be able to get a judge to agree to go on a live interview. That's not something that is an easy task. And the fact that we've got a judge doing several different interviews explaining why he feels it is important, or why it would be a great idea to see a defendant take the initiative early on and really dig in and explain how they allowed themselves to get into the spot they're in, what led them to making these horrible life choice decisions, giving some background on family. If you grew up in a rough family, if you grew up in a drug-infested family, if you grew up without a parent, you grew up on your own, not using these as crutches or excuses to make a reason for why you did what you did, but just demonstrating this in the right way. Again, the delivery is so important that if it's not delivered properly, it just comes across as you're making excuses and justifications for why you are where you are today. Ultimately, the judge needs to hear from you. What led you to be in front of him today? What series of altered events brought you here? Illustrated, explained, and remorseful, segueing into the choices and the decisions you've made since the time of your instant offense. What have you done to atone? Not just words that I'm sorry for what I did and I'm gonna do better and I'm gonna become a prison advocate. I'm gonna help people. That's great to want to do those things, but what have you actually done? What can you explain? What can you show the judge? Here's where I've gone and put in 1,000 hours of community service. Here's the schools I've gone to and spoke to so many children on so many occasions, letting them know that these seemingly unimportant decisions that they're making right now, thinking that there's no consequences now, they lead up to this giant new way of thinking when you get older, where your rational thinking becomes irrational. You're now making these decisions that you are rationalizing, where deep down inside you know you're just justifying, and these are poor decisions that are allowing you to continue to make these choices that could potentially land somebody in prison. So what are you doing to demonstrate that, to show the judge that you understand that? You can't just say it. Words have no meaning without action. Zero. How many times have we been in a situation or relationship where someone says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it again. I love you. You're my entire world. I'll never do this again. And then next week they're doing the same thing because they're not taking corrective measures. They're not putting in the work. So if you're going to tell the judge that you're doing these things, you better be able to back it up, because if you can't back it up, it has zero meaning. These personal narratives, these character reference letters, preparing for your PSR, making sure you understand what you're walking into. If you've got minimum mandatories, obviously, minimum mandatories, you're going to be stuck at some point getting time regardless. But ultimately, you want to make sure that you're not going to get additional time. You want to make sure, if you do have minimum mandatories, that you're in the best possible position to qualify for programs that the BOP offers, like Rdap, the Residential Drug Addiction Program, additional halfway house. Make sure you know how to navigate yourself into this position so you can take advantage of it at the right time. Preparation today is going to be what makes the difference tomorrow. And for some of us, tomorrow could be next year. For some of us, tomorrow might be several years down the road. We don't know. But if you're not willing to put in the work right now for what it is you ultimately want at the end of the road, when it gets time to need what you want, you're going to be scrambling, you're going to start throwing things together, and you're just not going to get the outcome that you're getting. That is the single reason that we continue to do what we do the research that we do. I stock out everybody else's YouTube channels that are out there providing information, because once you think you have it all figured out and you think you have all the answers, that's when you're going to fall flat on your face. We should always be continually to grow, learn, admit our mistakes, admit when we do things wrong, admit when somebody brings something to your attention. Don't just shut it down because you're hearing something you don't want to hear. Objectively look at it and realize, why is this person saying this to me? Are they seeing something that maybe I could be doing differently, or something that I could be focusing on? Making choices and doing the right thing is easier said than done, right? It all starts with when you wake up in the morning. If you want to get your day off right, if you want to attack the world and you want to take things on and you want to do accomplishments and you want to get your goals reached, it all starts with waking up in the right state of mind. When you wake up every day, the first thing we should be doing is make your bed, because now you've got one goal accomplished. You've made your bed. And just the state of mind that is going to put you in will usually carry over to the next, whatever it's going to be. Doing some dishes, making breakfast for the family, whatever it is. Start with something simple. Don't find the biggest task out there and go start attacking those. Take the little tasks, because those are going to create habits that are going to become a new you. It's the only way we're going to make progress, guys. Prison does not have to be this horrible experience. And that's what people don't understand is, no one wants to go to prison. No one wants to leave their family. But most of the people in this room, I'm not going to say everybody, but a big majority of the people that come in and watch these channels are either facing camp time, they're going to possibly going to a low, maybe even some mediums, but almost everybody in this room is going to have a release date. Almost everybody will have a release date, which means you are going to get released from prison. So when do you start preparing for that release? All too often, we see people that start preparing 60, 90 days before they get released from prison. And that anxiety is probably way more intense, at least it was for me. The anxiety of getting out of prison, and I wasn't there very long. I had a 42-month sentence. And due to good time Rdap halfway house, I was actually only there for 13 months. But when it got time to go, I started to worry a little bit about, what am I going to do? How is my felony going to affect me? What is the halfway house actually going to be like? I didn't do a whole lot of research until I got near these things. And going back, these are things that I wish I had done differently. Preparation is the absolute biggest key that any of us can be doing. And it doesn't matter what your release date is. Positioning yourself with an attorney and a prison consultant can be an awesome combination if you're still willing to do what needs to get done. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday that has an attorney that hasn't had a whole lot of federal experience, doesn't know a whole lot about Rdap, narratives, character reference letters, the halfway house, how to get additional halfway house time, hasn't had a whole lot of experience in that area. And the client was really nervous about that. So I'm trying to explain to the client, I understand, there's nothing being nervous about is going to do to fix it, right? So what can you do? Combining with what the attorney's focusing on, which is as least time amount you can get sentenced to. He's focusing on your plea, hopefully. Adding a prison consultant to that mix can be the missing ingredient, because the prison consultant typically should be helping you with the narratives, the character reference letters, making sure you're prepared for the PSR interview. So if Rdap is going to be a possibility, you're now going to be aligned for that. So when that time does come, depending on how much time you get sentenced to, you can get the 6, 9, 12 months off, plus the 6 months halfway house or more. In my situation, I got 12 months off for Rdap. I received 11 months for halfway house plus my 6 months good time. That's 2.5 years off of a 42-month sentence. People ask me all the time, how did I do it? It's because I never stopped pushing. Once I got there and I realized these things were a possibility, I did not stop working for them. I hired somebody to help me get the additional halfway house time. Same person we use now on our team that is making amazing differences in people's lives every day. Just knowing that you need to have a good personal narrative sometimes isn't enough. Just because you need to have a good personal narrative doesn't mean you necessarily know what needs to go into that narrative. Same thing with the character reference letters. So part of the service that we do to make sure you're having that best possible outcome is we're giving you some samples. We're giving you some outlines. We're not going to sit here and give you some BS templates so everybody's looks the same. What we're going to do is give you some ideas, get you going in the positive direction that you need to go in, You're going to write your letters. You're going to send them in to us. Our team is then going to go in, make edits, recommendations, send it back to you for approval, as well as your attorney. It's important, at least it's important in our eyes, that your story is your story. We're not going to create your story for you. We want it to be your words, your thoughts. The only thing we're going to come in and do is we're basically going to tighten it up, edit it, and make sure it's properly prepared to have the impact that we're attempting to receive from the sentencing judge. And it's had tremendous results to date, guys. And those of you that are in this room that have been following for a long time, those of you can attest to that. We've seen clients get probation. We've seen clients go from 30-year sentences to 8.5-year sentences. We continually see clients that are getting downward departed. The frustrating area of this entire process is when the attorney steps in and says, "Oh, I don't know about this." It's like, what do they want you to do? They want you just to write some BS letter that you're begging for probation? We've got an attorney right now with a client that does not want the client to do his allocution. And I understand if you can't deliver an allocution properly, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. But this client has put together a very well written allocution that he's going to present to the judge at the day of sentencing. Your allocution should not be identical to what is going into your personal narrative. Your personal narrative is explaining something. You don't need to reiterate that at sentencing word for word. So if you have a personal narrative, your allocution should not be the same. Now, if you are going to give a oral allocution at sentencing, make sure you are prepared. You know, people think we're joking when we tell our clients, hey, if you want to do an allocution and you want us to support that idea and say, yeah, go do it, A, you better tell me you're a professional actor or you're used to giving public speeches, or B, you at least should be telling me you're willing to go to open mic night and practice this damn thing, because you need to be able to say it in front of people without fumbling your words, without breaking down, having this giant emotional roller coaster where you're sobbing and you can't get the words out, because the judge is just going to be rubbing his head going, oh my God, is this guy done yet? Because it's hard to retain information when you're all over the place. So if your allocution, it could be the best written allocution ever. If you can't deliver it the way that it's meant to be delivered, it's not necessarily going to have the impact that you want it to have. Again, the delivery, the same story can be read by two different people. Somebody that's got the right voice reflection, that is able to give that delivery up and down with his voice, is going to have a much better audience retention than somebody that's sitting there reading it word for word, monotone, scared out of his mind. So you need to get comfortable with whatever it is. We take your allocution from you. We'll make edits. We'll make recommendations. We'll make suggestions. Ultimately, it's going to be up to you. We do take attorneys' information or attorneys' feedback under consideration, but a lot of times this is so different from what attorneys are used to seeing that they tend to throw their hands up a little bit because it's doing a direction that they haven't gone into yet. So I can understand that attorneys don't like to dabble in waters they haven't been in. But guys, it is super important to hold your attorneys accountable. Get them to answer your questions. Force them, push information on them, ask. Because if you don't ask, sometimes you're not going to know. We just got an email. I just got a text message from a client that's been indicted, and due to all of the questions that he's been bringing to his attorney, that his attorney has now been forced to go back to prosecution, questioning certain things, this client just received a letter that his charges may be being dropped due to some additional information that would not have come about if this client wasn't grilling his attorney to go do above and beyond. It's easy to sit there and let your attorney do the bare minimum because you don't know what the bare minimum is. If you're watching these videos, the one thing you should be taking is it's important to take pride in your own situation and not just sit around with your head in the sand assuming the attorneys are doing everything that they can, because most times they are not. They are doing the bare minimum. They're taking a plea from the prosecutor, pitching it to you, hoping that you're going to take it, telling you why it's an amazing plea, why you should jump on this. And if you don't jump on this, you could be looking at additional time or going to trial and getting hammered, which ultimately is the truth. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be questioning him and pushing him to find out different things. What are other people getting? What are other similar cases? What have they received? Do your case studies. Find out people have similar cases to you, what the outcome was for them. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the outcome for you because there's different gears spinning. But you need to do your homework. Ask your attorney, what is your custody level going to be? What are your points? And if your attorney doesn't know, tell them to find out. If you're doing 5K1s and you're doing cooperation and you're doing potential Rule 35s and you do not know what your custody level is, meaning you don't know if you're going to a camp, a low, a medium, if you don't know where you're going to land and you're willing to do all of this stuff just to get some reduction on your time, you have to also be aware and conscious of where you might go. If you go to a medium prison, a medium or a pen, and you have all of this substantial cooperation, 5K1, potential Rule 35s under your belt, yes, you're potentially probably going to serve less time, but in a higher security level federal prison, these can cause you issues with other inmates, safety issues, comfort issues, meaning you're doing less time, but you're doing harder time. So these are things that you need to bring to your attorney's attention and explain to him why these are concerns of yours, because they're probably not concerns of theirs. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about a little bit today. So again, like I said, guys, this right now we're at 30 minutes, and I do realize not everybody that's going to come after this is going to want to sit around for a 30-minute video. So we are going to turn this into a shorter video. I will be making a video, getting some additional information for you guys, posting some bullet points up on the screen. You know, the beautiful thing about editing after the fact is you can add and take away, right? That's why we like to edit. But Joan Bowers had the same exact thing happen to me. I'm on my second lawyer because he wasn't looking into the case law. Yeah, that's so typical, and it's scary. Hey, Tamara, I just saw you. Just saw you jump in the room. Tamara, what's going on? We got Caitlin with us. Who else? We got Mike Winters. Got a nice, decent-sized crowd of people on this happy Saturday. So, yeah, guys, I don't want to waste your Saturday with, this and that, but give you a little update on me. So, I finished my community service for my probation, got that knocked out yesterday, so my 40 hours are done. I'm going to be petitioning to get early termination on my probation. I've got 3 years of probation that I need to do. I'll have a year in next month on September 20th. I think will be 1 year. So I'm going to push my hardest to try to get that reduced to being executed and finalized after the 1 year is over. We went and met with a client. I have my first local client here in town that saw the news article that the local news station did on me. And we went out and met with her and her family. And man, I wish I could do that with all of you, because being able to sit down with an entire family and really explain over an amazing meal with amazing people. It was me and Shelly, the lady that's looking at prison time, her 2 daughters, and her one of the daughters' husbands that are all supportive of the situation she's in. Explaining the importance of these narratives and character reference letters and being prepared for your PSR. She's hoping to get a lighter sentence, somewhere between like 6 and 12 to 18 months. So Rdap may not be even an option for her, but that doesn't mean you don't prepare for it, because you do not know what the judge is going to do at sentencing. The judge could be in a bad mood and, give her 36, 37 months where Rdap will be something that she'll want to take advantage of, and she's definitely a candidate for Rdap. Her crime is drug related, and she's basically stealing pills from a pharmacy that she worked at for personal use. Wasn't selling them. She became an addict, using them for herself. Definitely a upper. I would say she lives a very nice life. She has a great family, beautiful house, beautiful home, beautiful cars. Just got hooked on drugs through a prescription that she was supposed to be taking, and one thing led to another, and before you know it, addicted, and now she's facing federal prison time. Terrified. Family's terrified. So being able to spend several hours engaging in a very personal setting is amazing. I wish we could do that with all of our clients. It just, unfortunately, we can't. I got to resort to YouTube, phone calls, text messages. But I can't express it enough that the reason why I do this, guys, is I went through it. I know what it's like. I know what the fear. I know what the sleepless nights. I know when you're not getting answers from your attorney. I know nobody knows what the first day of prison is going to be like. Is it going to be scary? Is it going to be rough? What do I need to worry about? Knowing that makes me continually want to give back to you guys, put this information in to a format, into an area where you guys can easily obtain it and watch it when you want to watch it. Not everything's going to pertain to everybody, but it's one of those situations where you digest what means something to you, and the rest you move on from. We've got so many people that are going through so many things, and they just don't know where to turn for help. So we're trying to provide that support through a YouTube channel with rdapdan. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take off. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Any of you that are worried, nervous, freaking out, use and abuse my phone number on this screen. Also, make sure if you haven't already done so, text the word YouTube to 35074. That's going to put you on a notification list. It lets you know when new videos are coming out and also lets you know of any upcoming changes. We will be slightly changing some of the times that we release these live shows. Saturday probably won't change, but we originally were doing 7 p.m. Pacific time, then we moved to 6 p.m. Pacific time, and we might even try going back to either like 6:30 or 5 p.m. Pacific time. Those East Coasters, we want to make sure we're not catching you before you fall asleep, because we know you need information too, even though some people can't sleep. And that's why we do the later shows, is when you're laying there with anxiety riddled thoughts going through your mind, that's when we want to catch you, to make sure that you're able to combat that without doing something crazy. I get a lot of clients that send me messages of thinking about suicide and running. And when you read those messages, it's heartbreaking, because you don't know if you can make a difference, or you don't know if you can give them information. And you want to be careful on the information that you're giving somebody, because you don't want to give them misleading or hurtful information. So I do pay attention to what I tell you guys. I try not to ever give legal advice, and if I ever did it, it was an accident. Legal advice, stick to your attorneys. Hopefully they know, at least they know the law. If not, reach out to other attorneys, go on Avo, do what you can do to double check your research to make sure that you are in the best possible situation to serve the least amount of time, get what you need to get from prison so you don't return, is as important as serving a shorter sentence. So I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. I will see you guys Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Find me on Facebook, find me on Twitter, find me on Instagram, find me on Snapchat. Just look up rdapdan on any one of those mediums and you should be able to find me. Have a fantastic weekend, guys. I'm rdapdan. I will talk to you guys soon. Love every single one of you. Be safe. Until next time. People helping people. Community's method. Peace.